Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Spirit of Liberty broadcast. I'm Pastor Tommy McMurtry from Liberty Baptist Church in Rock Falls, and I hope you get a blessing from today's lesson. Very important. So last week we talked about godliness with contentment, and we talked about how there's difficult times coming. There's no doubt about it. We're in some difficult times right now, but I hate to sound like a pessimist, but I do believe that the worst is yet to come. There's no doubt that based on some of the things that have been implemented in our country, some of the financial decisions that are being made, that there is going to be some very long-term negative effects that come from this. I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know what exactly it's going to look like, but I know you cannot, shut down an economy for months and tell people to stay at home and do nothing for months and then send them checks and all the things that they're doing, and there not be some serious hardships that come as a result of that. And so again, though, if we have some character, if we follow the principles of the Bible, God is going to take care of his people. And now listen, just because you're a Christian, again, that doesn't mean you're going to be taken care of. Okay? If you live like the world, if you live like the devil, you're going to suffer just like the rest of them. Okay? You're not going to get any special exemption. You can be saved and you can be pathetic and lazy. Doesn't mean that, you're not going to have any problems. You're still going to have problems if you're pathetic and lazy. And we have a mass pandemic of laziness that's been going on for a really long time in our country. And I think it's especially accelerated in the last couple months when people are basically being paid to stay home. And not only that, but they're being told that they're heroes if they're staying home, doing nothing, being lazy. And I understand, some people don't have a choice, okay? If you just don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. Yeah, I'm not picking on you for not working during this time, but I hope you're getting some house projects done. I hope your yard's looking nice. There's things that you can still do in fact, there's a lot of things you can do even if you're not going to work. And I hope you're doing that. I hope you're not just getting caught up on all your television shows that you've got behind on. I hope you're actually doing something productive because you don't want to get lazy. It's easy to get lazy. It's easy to develop bad habits. And laziness has always been a problem for people. It's always brought hardship. But, in our country in the last several years, because of our welfare programs and things that we have, we've given people a false sense of reality for a long time. I mean, we reward people who do not work. There's a lot of lazy good for nothings out there, totally capable of getting a job that just won't do it. And they haven't had to go hungry. They've not had to starve. They've not had to do without many things because of our welfare system, and it's only encouraged them to be pathetic and lazy. I believe the welfare program, I think it's good to do, to help those who are in need, going through hard times. There's people who can't help themselves. There's people who don't have the ability to work. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad people taking advantage of the system. And I think because they have that to fall back on, it stopped them from doing some of the things that, nature would have just kind of forced them to do before, would have made them better off. And I think we're actually destroying a lot of lives through the welfare programs and things we have today. And so I just want to say, though, that, if you want to get through the tough times that are coming, you need to be a hard worker. This is a character trait that you must have. Okay? I understand. We live in the United States of America. We have been very blessed. Our country is very prosperous, and you've not had to work real hard to survive. But I don't think it's going to stay that way. I think it's going to become more difficult to survive. And if you're not a hard worker, you're going to fail. You're going to be in trouble. And so let's look at some scriptures about, work and about the lazy, the slothful is a word the Bible uses a lot. See what the Bible says. So it says in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 8, one of the 10 commandments, it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And then the next verse says, 6 days shalt thou labor. 6 days shalt thou labor. God wants us to work. God does not want us being lazy people. Many people think that, work is a curse, and it's not a curse. In fact, God gave man work to do before the fall of man. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 2 and 3, the Bible talks about how God planted a garden and God put man in that garden to dress it and keep it. Man needs something to do. They need work to do. It's an important thing for them. It's a part of just who we are, how we're made, how we're wired. We're not made to just sit around and be lazy. I mean, so even God himself worked. So it's not a curse. God wasn't under any curse. God worked for 6 days creating this entire universe. And on the seventh day, he rested. So now when man sinned, when man fell, and he had to go, the work became more difficult. He now was going to have to sweat. He was going to have things in nature working against him. He was going to have challenges. And some of you welfare cases out there, you let any challenge stop you from working. Anything, that makes any kind of difficulty at all, you think that's a reason for you not to work. And that kind of thing makes me sick, because I've known blind people who had jobs. I've known people who that are in wheelchairs that have had jobs. There have been many people with major handicaps that have still gone on and done productive things and have been very productive members of society. They have been taxpayers, and they have supported pathetic, lazy welfare cases like some of you out there, even though they had legitimate handicaps. How were they able to do it? I'll tell you how. They had character. And people with character, they're the ones that are going to survive the tough times. And when things get really difficult, some of you out there, you're going to be dropping dead like crazy, because you're not going to be able to survive. You're not going to be capable of surviving, and you ought to be scared to death. And I'm going to show a Bible to just prove this. The Bible says that if a man does not provide, especially for they of his own house, he had denied the faith. He is worse than an infidel. You don't provide and take care of your family, you're horrible. You're worse than an infidel. The Bible says if a man does not work, neither should he eat. Okay? And that might offend some of you out there, but that's what the Bible says. And you have no business, eating based on the labors of other men when you have done nothing. You don't deserve to survive the difficult times. You don't deserve to survive in good times if you're going to be lazy. And one of the problems we have in our country, we don't let anybody get hungry. And because of that, people think it's okay to be lazy. And you can't. Our country's so dumb, our welfare system's so messed up, that lazy, good for nothing, drug dealing losers can still get food. And I think that's too bad. And you see it all the time where people on welfare buying lottery tickets in the grocery store, buying beer, buying cigarettes. They have the money for all that stuff, but they can't pay for their own food. That's too bad. Okay? I wonder if all of a sudden welfare went away, I wonder what would happen to the pornography industry. I wonder if all of a sudden welfare went away, what would happen to the beer companies. I wonder how much, illegal drugs. I wonder what would happen to the illegal drug business if all of a sudden we took welfare away. I think we could do more to win the war on drugs by just having some welfare reform than literally any other program out there. Because the people who are on welfare most of the time, not all the time, but in many cases, because they have bad character. People with bad character, they turn to things like drugs and alcohol and pornography and all that stuff. Okay? Because they just have given their life to pleasing their sorry flesh. And the times have been good in the United States. We've been very blessed. So you've been able to be that way. But I believe the time is coming very soon where you're not going to be able to be that way. And you will be in trouble. So let's look at some scriptures on this. The Bible says in Proverbs 6:6, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? And when wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little slumber, a little folding in the hands of sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man." Notice that the ant does not need government. Now, I understand there is a place for government. There is a need for government because the government is there for the punishment of evildoers. We need government because there's bad people out there, but good people don't need it. And an ant does not need a guide, overseer, or ruler. It works all by itself without being told what to do. And an important character trait that you need to have, all right? And I'm not really that interested in just helping the pathetic and lazy right now. I want to help God's people during the tough times that are going to come. And so something that you need to understand, a character trait you need to have in your life, is nobody should have to tell you to go to work. Nobody should have to tell you to do that. Nobody should have to wake you up in the morning. You know, I'm sickened by some of these grown men whose moms still have to wake them up and get them to go to work in the morning. You shouldn't need your mama doing that. You ought to have enough character to set an alarm clock and get your sorry carcass out of bed and go do some labor. You ought to be able to do that. Nobody has to tell an ant how to do it. But you know what? If you love your sleep so much, it says, so shall thy poverty come. As one that travaileth, and thy want is an armed man. You're going to get hungry. You're going to be, and you know what's funny? It's the lazy, it's the welfare cases that need government because they're bad people, but they are also the ones who are always screaming for more government. How do you think the Democrats have gotten power like they have? You know why? Because they're constantly giving people stuff. They're giving people free stuff, and they're telling you, keep electing me, keep electing Democrats. We'll give you more stuff. And so they do. They vote for just these horrible abominations like Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. How do they do that? They're buying them off. And you know, Republicans are doing it too. Why do you think a majority of the country is shutting the lockdown right now? I'll tell you why. Because Trump sent everybody checks. Trump's paying everybody. Trump signed bills getting companies to continue paying their employees even though they're sitting home doing nothing and they're not working. And I'm telling you right now, if people weren't getting paid to stay home, I promise you a lot more people would be screaming for our country to open back up. But they're getting paid off. And they're taking it. And you know what? I got the Trump bucks too. But I'm not going to let them buy me off with that. What they're doing is wrong. And I'm going to speak out against it. I don't care how much money they send me. They're not going to buy me off. And I'm telling you, the reason a majority of the country and a majority of you out there that are supporting this foolishness, you support it because you like sitting at home and getting paid for nothing. And you know, there's people out there who are still working who support it. I'll listen to what them, I'll respect their opinion. But if you are getting paid to not work, I do not respect your opinion on this whole thing. Because I believe your opinion would be different if you were actually, if you were not getting paid. I think you'd be wanting to go back to work to provide for your family. And some of us don't want the government providing for our family. We want to do it ourselves because we realize the long-term negative effects that come when government gets control of everything. So, you understand, nobody should have to tell you to get to work. And if somebody's got to crack a whip with you, you're pathetic. You're never going to make it in life. You're not going to do well. Another thing, you should be the kind of person that somebody wants to work with. The Bible says in Proverbs 10 in verse 26, it says, as vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him. All right. What does that mean? All right. It's annoying. It's a pain to have to send somebody out to do something. You need something done and you delegate it to somebody else and they're lazy. They're good for nothing. It's like smoke to the eyes. It's like vinegar to the teeth. It's an annoyance because you know they're not going to get it done. You know they're not going to do what they're supposed to do. You know you're probably going to have to hold their hand through the whole thing and understand that, you know, we're losing jobs like crazy in this country. And just a couple months ago, I mean, companies couldn't find workers. That's probably going to change here pretty soon, and you're going to have competition. And if you're lazy, okay, you're not going to do well. But if you're a hard worker, if you're a go-getter, if you're somebody with some character, you're the one they're going to want. You see, because now companies have a big group to choose from. So you know what? You better be hardworking. You better have some character. You better not show up for your job interview in your pajamas, looking like you haven't bathed in days, all pierced up and everything, just looking like a freak. You better not be on those drugs. A lot more companies now are probably going to go ahead and keep doing the drug tests. Because you know what? Now there's enough people out there. There's a market for good people because so many people are going to be looking for jobs. So just understand, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to wish you hadn't done some of the things that you've done to your appearance because you're going to get discriminated against. And you might not like that. You might think that's illegal or whatever, but guess what? It's going to happen. It's just reality. So understand too, the hardworking will always be above the lazy. It says the hand in Proverbs 12:24, the hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. You're going to be the one getting walked on. You're going to be the one working for someone else. You're going to be the one under tribute. Why? Because you're lazy. Another thing too about lazy people, they don't appreciate what they have. It says in Proverbs 12:27, the slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of the diligent man is precious. And that's a great verse right there. I remember years ago, we used to have a food pantry here at the church, and we'd help people with food and everything, but I kind of got tired of it because most of the people we were helping were just lazy good for nothings that had no desire to better themselves or do any work. They just wanted free hands out and just kind of made their rounds everywhere. And I was like, I didn't feel like we were doing any good for anybody. And I remember one day I went over and visited an individual who some of his family had come to our church, who had been helped with the food pantry and everything. And I remember I was at his back door, and sitting outside of his house was a box of food from the food pantry, and literally all the fruit, all the vegetables, anything that was like healthy, it was sitting in the box in the rain, ruined. He took out like all the instant stuff, the cereal, the chips, the things that are just that take no effort to eat, the things that are unhealthy, the most unhealthy, and the things that were actually had some nutritional value to it, he just wasted. He didn't care about the substance that he was given because he didn't do any work for it. And that's what we're seeing in the welfare culture today. They are very wasteful people. They don't appreciate what they have. They're getting more, they have more money to spend on their link card than they could, they can never eat all that food. But yet they spend it all. But what happens? They're wasting it. They're buying junk. Okay? The substance that they have, it's not precious to them. Somebody who works for what they have, they appreciate what they have. And you'll see it with your own kids. This is something, I've seen with my children. This is something my dad showed me. When you're a kid, when you're a child and everything's just provided for you, it's like you think your parents have this unlimited supply of money. And so you'll ask for anything, thinking, you'll ask for things that are kind of extravagant because you just want it. It doesn't cost you anything. But one thing that you'll often notice is whenever your kids, like with my kids, I would have them start earning their money, all of a sudden they would start looking at some of these items that they wanted differently because they're like, you know what? I had to work really hard to get this money. I don't know if I want to spend it on this. We had a guy from our church who told me about his boys. They wanted these $50 jeans really bad when they were younger. And of course, he wasn't going to buy them the $50 jeans. He thought that was extravagant, and I agree. And so later, they earned some money. They worked really hard for it. And then all of a sudden, they didn't want to buy the $50 jeans anymore. All of a sudden, they now understood, I don't need to spend $50 on a pair of jeans. That's just kind of extravagant. It's kind of a waste. You know what happened? They appreciated what they had. Why? Because they had got it through some diligence. They got it through some hard work. But a lazy person who has everything handed to them, they don't see things that way. It means nothing to them. They don't even consider for 1 second the fact that their, Trump bucks that they got, their stimulus check that they got was basically going to be provided by a hard worker somewhere. And you're like, well, I work too. Exactly. You know what? And I want to, pay myself. I want to take care of myself, not everybody else, not some lazy bum. Okay? And People need to appreciate these things and they need to take that stuff in consideration, but they don't. They're wasteful. It says he also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster. That's Proverbs 18:9. Okay, lazy people and wasters are one and the same. It's just how they are. They do not care. The lazy never find satisfaction. Okay, the welfare crowd is always going to be begging the government for more welfare. It says in Proverbs 13:4, the soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. Okay, and it doesn't say the body there, but the soul be made fat. In other words, it's going to be satisfied. It's going to be content with what it has. It's going to be happy. And there's hardworking people out there who they don't have a lot. They're not millionaires. They're not driving fancy cars. They don't live in fancy houses. But you know what? They're happy and they're content with what they have. They are at peace. They are thankful. But then you got these welfare cases out there that have so much handed to them that they're literally fat and they're not satisfied. They're constantly wanting more. Their families are totally obese, and the solution that the government has is, well, we need to give them more welfare money so they can afford to buy healthier food. Hey, newsflash, they're not going to do it. Okay, you go and you give them more money, all right, to buy food, and that's just going to be more Twinkies. It's going to be more ding dongs and things, more Little Debbie snacks. That's all they're going to do. They're not going to go buy things that are more healthy. They're not going to buy organic. They're not going to buy fruits and vegetables. They waste that stuff. Why? Because they don't appreciate it. Okay? And listen, fruit's cheap. Fruit is not that expensive. And fruit tastes wonderful. But you know what? They're too lazy to peel a banana. They're too lazy to peel an orange. It takes too much work. Okay? They got to make even the wrappers on these bags of chips, simple to open. Otherwise, people won't get them anymore. That's how lazy they are. They're not going to cook anything. They're not going to go and put the work into that actually to do the stuff that actually makes food taste really good. So it's not going to help. They don't appreciate what they have. They're wasteful. The lazy never find satisfaction. They can never have enough. And being lazy, they think it's going to make their life easier, but it actually makes it more difficult. It says in Proverbs 15:19, the way of the slothful man is an hedge of thorns, but the way of the righteous is made plain. And listen, I worked for years a job where I had to go into work at 3:30 in the morning, and it was a very labor intense job. It was a very difficult job, but that's what I needed to do to provide for my family. And every morning, I don't care what time you go to bed, it is always hard to get up at 2:30 in the morning. It just is. It's always hard. It would always, every day that I ever got up at 2:30 in the morning, it would have been easier for me to just sleep in and be late for work or call off. However, if I would have done that, while that day would have been easier, down the road would have been harder. My paycheck would have been less, thus making it harder for me to pay my bills. If every day that I'm missing work, being late, it's going to start racking up points against me, and eventually I'm going to get fired, making my future more difficult. So you see, lazy people, they don't think ahead. They don't think in the future. So what happens is they think about that day. Well, that day, it would be easier to just stay home and skip work. So that's what they do. But what they did was easier. The guy who had character and did the hard thing and went to work, his day was harder, but his future is easier. So understand, lazy people, you think what you're doing is easier, but you're actually making your life more difficult. You need to learn to start thinking ahead, because it's a hedge of thorns. You're in for a lot of trouble. In the book of Proverbs, it's just full of verses, about the slothful and the sluggard and things like that. I'll read a few more. Proverbs 19:24 says, a slothful man hideth his hand in his bosom and will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. What's he doing? He's faking a disability so someone else will feed him. That's what that's talking about right there. Lazy people pretend they don't have the ability to do what is necessary because they want somebody else to do the work for them. And that's why I said some people literally can't. There are some people who have literal, I mean, real disabilities. But yet there's people too who have disabilities that still go on and do things. So, understand this, this is an important thing. And being a hard worker, it doesn't just mean too you have a labor intense job. It takes a lot of work to do, what you could say physically easier jobs. Okay. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 12:12, it says, much study, at the end of the verse says, much study is a weariness of the flesh. Some people are able to do physically easier jobs because they had the character to go learn something. They had the character to learn a trade or learn a skill, where they don't have to beat their body up to go and provide for their family. So understand those people aren't lazy. Okay? People who have jobs, or maybe they're in front of a computer all the time, they're not lazy people. They were able to get a job like that because they were hard workers. In many cases, they might have been even more of a hard worker, because they were able to learn that skill to help them do that. But either way, my dad always taught me two things, pay your bills and work hard. And if you are a hard worker, companies are going to want you. Because let me tell you something, people with character are in short supply today. And so understand, if you're a child of God, you should already be this way. You should be a hard worker. You should not be a lazy, good for nothing. And don't think that just because you got saved, all of a sudden that turned you into a hard worker. No, you got to develop some character yourself. You better start, saying no to your flesh and walking in the Spirit and doing some of these things we've been commanded to do. You better start making this a part of your life, because difficult days are coming. And if you're lazy, if you're not going to work, you're going to really struggle during these times. But I believe that God will help his people get through these times, but we're not going to help ourselves by being disobedient to him, because then we're going to receive the chastening of God. And God does not appreciate his children being lazy, being good for nothing. So just understand, with the times that are coming, things are probably going to get more difficult. And you know what? God never promised that we were going to live a life of ease and just all smooth sailing. In fact, he promised there were going to be tough times that were coming. The Bible is very clear about that. And many people think, oh, these difficult times come, we're all going to die. No, you're not. Not if you have some character. Yeah, it might get hard, probably will get hard, but if you have some character, if you've got some grit and determination, and you're willing to go out there and maybe start working harder for less money, that might be what you have to do. But just don't be lazy, don't give up, don't quit, and just get to work. It's so important. Bible says in Proverbs 21:25, the desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. Some people just do anything to get out of work. They'll make excuses. The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold, therefore he shall beg and harvest and have nothing. There's always an excuse, folks. Times are tough. You can sit there and make excuses all you want and just starve to death and die, or you can just overcome. You can just be a hard worker and understand these principles. They apply since the beginning of time. But I believe more than ever, we're going to see a need for these things. So make sure that you are a hard worker. You understand the importance of just being a hard worker. Don't be a lazy good for nothing. They're all over today, but you don't need to be that way. You can be an exception. So God bless you. Thank you so much for watching this. We will see you all next week.